Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser, and we're just peeking over the afternoon. So it's technically not a Hawk Blogger Morning, but it is if there's an HB AM, there's also HB PM. And today, Finn wants to join the show. So Finn gets what he wants occasionally. So for those that are listening, not watching, Finn's my dog. And today it's going to be a fun one. A lot of people have been asking about this. I'm finally of the state of mind that I'm ready to start talking about the 53-man roster projection. And we're going to start with a focus on the offense. And I'm going to go through each position group. I'm going to talk to you about what the Seahawks kept last year, the numbers wise, what I think they're going to keep this year, and some tough decisions that are going to start coming into this. And then tomorrow I will get into the defensive side of the ball, and we'll put it all together and see where there's going to be some trade-offs that are going to have to be made across the roster. On Thursday, really excited to welcome EJ Snyder from Bootleg Football to the show. So we'll be able to have EJ on. That'll be 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be able to talk and hang out with EJ for a while. They just did their Seahawks kind of overview, and they did a great job on that. They do really good stuff over there at Bootleg Football. So we'll check that out on Thursday. And obviously got a lot more coming up. Next week is when the team officially starts training camp. I'm going to be taking this weekend to go down and visit my son and some friends from old high school friends and play some golf with some guys. So my schedule this weekend might be a little weird, but we'll keep you updated as much as I can. And I appreciate all your flexibility as we go through it. There's some news, and I'm going to talk about that first, and then I'll get into the 53-man roster projection. If you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, I would appreciate it. It's great to have you. Great to build this community that we've got going on here. Go over to patreon.com/hawkblogger. That's where you can sign up for ad-free audio, as well as get access to the Discord channel and get verified at hbtix.com, hbtix.com, the best place that if you're a Seahawks fan and you want to make sure you sell your tickets to a Seahawks fan to keep and protect the Seahawks home field advantage, HBTix is the place to go to do it. So some news. A few things that caught my attention. One, Jauan Jennings yesterday, if you missed it, for the San Francisco 49ers, he is holding out, essentially either requesting that the 49ers give him a new deal or that they sign him to an extension. And here's the thing for the 49ers. If you've been listening to this show and you listened in particular to the NFC West position group rankings, you will know that the 49ers wide receiver room is pretty thin at this point. Brandon Ayuk, I had not realized how severe the knee injury was that he sustained, ACL, MCL. Expectation is he's going to start the year on PUP at least, and who knows how long he will be out. That'd be at least the first 4 games. Then you've got Demarcus Robinson, who they signed as a free agent from the Rams, and the word was he had a good year for the Rams. The word was the reason the Rams didn't re-sign him was because they knew that there was going to be some sort of off-field issue that was going to likely result in a suspension. That news kind of broke. I don't think the suspension has been finalized, but I think they're expecting him to miss the first couple of games, at least, of the season. And if you're counting, the Seahawks play the 49ers in week 1. So this all matters for Seattle quite a bit. And then if you now have Jauan Jennings potentially not on the team, either for a holdout or a trade or something else, you're talking about Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing. It is a thin room once you get past Jauan Jennings. And Jauan Jennings, even when those, Brandon Ayuk was going to be there, I think Jauan Jennings is still one of the top targets for that team. So we'll see what happens. I expect that the 49ers, that he's got them over a barrel. They've got to keep him. They've got to make him happy. They also have been really stingy with money lately, at least for some players. And they've been very generous with others, George Kittle and Fred Warner, and I wouldn't say they were generous with Brock Purdy, but I think they gave him a reasonable contract. So it's going to be interesting. I think my expectation is they will extend him and give him more money, but that's going to be one to watch. Next bit of news. The Kansas City Chiefs signed their Pro Bowl All-Pro guard Trey Smith to a massive deal. And this just came out today from Adam Schefter. They signed him to a 4-year, $94 million deal with $70 million guaranteed. That makes him the highest paid guard in NFL history. And this is why there's always been this reticence of NFL front offices to spend a first round pick on a guard because the economics don't really make as much sense. Part of what you want to spend a first round pick on as a fan is just get me the best player. That's what fans generally are going to think about. One of the other factors for a front office, for a general manager to kind of evaluate is what kind of value are you actually extracting from the draft? Ideally, you want to get a player who can be under club control for 5 years with the 5-year option, 5th-year option, and want that to be for the largest possible contract differential that you can get. What do I mean by contract differential? I mean, if you have a quarterback and the franchise tag number for a quarterback is $40 million, and you have a first round pick making, $1.5 million, $2 million, whatever it is a year, that's a massive spread. Now, if you draft a center and a center, is making $8 million a year on average, something like that, maybe 9 or 10, then that $2 to $10 million spread is not nearly as advantageous to the team from a cap perspective. You're not saving as much money with that first round pick, even if that player becomes really, really good. So guard has been lumped in with center and with running back, and in the past, defensive tackle. But now I think you have to look at this and say the Seahawks draft pick of Gray Zabel, if he turns out to be as good as I think he's going to be, and I think the team hopes he will be, that's going to be a really advantageous contract to have him for up to 5 years under club control. So just an interesting kind of cycle to watch there, what's happening. And what we've seen is the defensive tackle market has really exploded. And a lot of those guys inside on the interior on the defensive line are getting paid. Now you're starting to see the kind of cyclical thing go back to the offensive side, the people that are blocking those guys, the guards, getting paid. Centers are still not super well compensated, but guards are starting to be. The same thing happened when edge rushers were getting paid, and then the tackles that were blocking them on the offensive side were getting paid. So this is something that has happened throughout the NFL before, and we will see if it continues. The other thing that may be news, I don't know if this is real or not. This is something coming from an SB Nation Cincinnati Bengals blog, Cincy Jungle. The author is Patrick Judas. So take this for whatever it is, but this is a published article. It was shared just a couple of hours ago. If you've been following along, Shemar Stewart, the Cincinnati Bengals first round pick, has not been reporting because the Bengals are requiring something in his deal that is new and different than what they've done in the past. And Shemar Stewart and his agent are not agreeing to do that, to whatever that stipulation is. Well, the news as of today is that Shemar Stewart has been practicing with the Texas A&M football team, the team he played for, and that there is a chance that Shemar Stewart may choose to go back to school. He has not signed a contract. I believe that makes him eligible to still go back to school if he were to choose. And I don't know the rules of what would happen for the Bengals, if they would retain his rights or not after like a year. Like by next year, would he be back in the draft for anybody? I don't know all those rules. I could look it up, but this is the quote. Bud Elliott from 247 Sports said this: a guy who has had some good A&M stuff in the past, he hit me. He's like, hey, Shemar might end up back here. He has been at College Station. He has been fully involved in workouts. He could try to come back and play again this season and go into the draft again next year. So That would be a remarkable story. And as I will acknowledge, I will never shy away from my past takes. I was a big fan of what I'd seen from Shemar Stewart. I thought he was incredibly talented and someone who had a lot to offer and grow into as a pass rusher. I don't know if the Seahawks really dodged a bullet by not drafting him, because I'm not sure the Seahawks would be the Bengals. The Bengals are just an absolute joke of a franchise in how they run things, and players give them an F all the time for how cheap ownership is and how poorly the teams run. But maybe the Seahawks did. Maybe they did dodge a bullet. Maybe this is a Shemar Stewart thing as much as it's anything else. So those are 3 bits of news that I thought, or maybe 4, I can't remember if I counted right, that caught my attention, were particularly interesting. We will start to find out soon if Nick Emmanwori is going to report and Elijah Arroyo, without their second-round pick contracts yet signed. John Schneider and the Seahawks are next up after the 2 guaranteed contracts were handed out by the Houston Texans and the Cleveland Browns, and now it's up to the Seahawks to see what they do. It's going to get done. It's just a matter of when. Let's hope this doesn't drag out. Let's hope that those guys who have been on the field for all of offseason practices so far will be there, will practice, and that the team will iron this out and they'll get them signed. So those are the things. Those are the things to pay attention to. I'm hearing from at least somebody that maybe that Shemar Stewart would be ineligible to play in college football this year. Not sure. We'll find out. All right. So let's talk about the 53-man roster. That's what you're here for. That's what I'm here for. And the way I do this is every year I kind of I look at what's been done in the past, and then what will be done most likely this year. And so I'm going to start by just sharing with you. I'm going to share with you last year's roster, the final 53 that actually came out. And let me put this up so you guys can see what I am seeing. All right. I'll make it a little bit bigger for you, and then we'll talk through it. So what this is showing is you've got the positions up here: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, right? Those are the offensive positions. And then the guys in green are who they kept at the cut, and the guys in blue are guys that they cut. And the numbers down here in this row show the actual numbers of how many they kept. So last year, they kept 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 6 receivers, 4 tight ends, and 11 offensive linemen. And the offensive lineman was a surprising number to me. I don't think I've ever seen the Seahawks keep more than 10 offensive linemen. I've seen them keep less than 10 before. So keeping 11 was a new trend. And I will say, as I'll get into the projections for this year, I don't think that's going to be a short-term trend. I think if you are of the belief that offensive linemen are really hard to find, that they are not being developed well, you don't have a minor league system to really, John Schneider's talked about NFL Europe like 10 times this offseason about how it's hard to not have that. The thing that makes sense is to draft and develop those linemen yourself, and to keep more guys on the roster that you can control and protect. Practice squad's obviously part of that as well, but teams can sign guys off your practice squad. So I think that it makes sense to me that the Seahawks are going to try to keep more offensive linemen more often until they get their offensive line in a situation where they feel really good about the players that they have. Now, what that adds up to is 15, 17, 22. Is that right? 5, 11, 22, 25. Excuse me, 25 on offense. So you figure 3 specialists. So you usually get, if you 25 and 25 offense, 25 defense gets you to 50, and then 3 specialists gets you to 53. So if you have 25 on one side, you're going to have 25 on the other. Now, the thing to pay attention to for last year's team is that they weren't going to keep 3 quarterbacks. Like, that wasn't a question. You'll see in a little bit. I think that's going to change this year, which already changed the roster math for this team on offense. Running backs is interesting. They had 4 guys that they really liked. George Halani, I think, got injured, and so they were able to put him on practice squad, and he just was kind of hidden there for a while. I think they really like him. I wouldn't be surprised if they stash him away again, but they kept 3. That's an interesting number, and I think it's going to be a challenging number for them to consider this year. Wide receiver, you had a number of guys that made this roster last year, 6 receivers that made this roster last year. And of those 6, 3 of them are no longer in Seattle. DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Laviska Shenault Jr., not with this team. You had some guys that were cut. Cody White, for example, that did get on the roster during the season and played pretty well. And I think we'll talk about him, has some chance to sneak his way onto the roster this year. And the other thing to pay attention to with the 6 receivers is Ryan Grubb was a passing centric coordinator. He was played 3 receiver sets more than anyone but like maybe 2 other offenses, maybe 1 other offense in the NFL last year. This is not going to be a 3 wide receiver set. This is not going to be an 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end kind of offense. So I think the wide receiver numbers are going to be different. We'll talk about that. They kept 4 tight ends: Noah Fant, Farrah Brown, Brady Russell, and AJ Barner. And I think that obviously Farrah Brown's no longer here. The other 3 guys are. Brady Russell right now is counting as a fullback. And I'm actually realizing, I'm going to have to make some changes to the roster that I set up because I didn't have a fullback column before. Interesting. Fun. Okay. All right. This is going to make for some live changes. Okay, cool. All right. So I will make those changes as we go. You guys are always cool about that. And let me just get that set up. And then we'll keep going. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that with the addition of a fullback, the tight end numbers are going to be different. So Brady Russell's not really considered a fullback at this point. He's considered a tight end. Or sorry, he's not considered a tight end. He's considered a fullback. I am not convinced that's how things are going to end up by the end of training camp, but we will see. All right. And then offensive line, I mentioned that they kept 11. They kept some surprising guys. I did not expect them to keep Satawa Lamea last year. I definitely did not expect them to keep Jalen Sundell last year at this time. Jalen Sundell was an undrafted free agent. And they cut McLennan Curtis and Raekwon O'Neal and Garrett Greenfield, a bunch of guys. And I think they feel good about the guys that they kept. But again, you're talking about a lot of guys that are no longer here. Connor Williams was part of the squad. George Fant was part of the squad. Laken Tomlinson, Stone Forsythe, all those guys were part of the roster last year. Those guys aren't here. So a lot of changes on the offensive side. This is going to be fun. And I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you guys about where things fall. So let's go ahead and start this. I'm going to have to do some changes real time, but you guys are cool. We'll figure it out. So this is the start of projecting at this point, July 15th. What is it? 8 days before camp begins, what I am currently projecting, my current expectations. And the way to look at this is green are guys that I believe are locks to make the roster. Blue are guys that I think I have high confidence will make the roster. And yellow are guys that are on the bubble. And then again, at the bottom, you see who I've got projected the number of keep I'm projecting. So for quarterback, I'm projecting they will keep 3 players. Now, the reason I don't have, well, let me just read for people that are listening instead of watching. I have Sam Darnold top of the list, and the way it goes is generally from top to bottom in terms of who I think is most likely to make the roster. Sam Darnold's a lock. I have Jalen Milroe above Drew Lock. That might seem a little odd because I think Drew Lock is very clearly the backup quarterback in terms of reps. The reason I have that is, one, I think that Jalen Milroe is more of a lock than Drew Lock is. I think that they will not exit training camp without Jalen Milroe on this roster. There is some unlikely but possible scenario where Jalen Milroe plays so well during the preseason, they feel so confident in him that they decide not to keep Drew Lock. That's a possibility. They would save some money. And if they want Jalen Milroe to be getting snaps during the season, remember the rule that I shared with you many, many weeks or months ago at this point. But you would need to have 3 quarterbacks active on the active roster on Sundays if you want Jalen Milroe to get snaps, but you want Drew Lock to be your backup. So if you want Jalen Milroe to be your, gadget, wildcat, sub-package kind of quarterback, red zone, short yardage, whatever, he has to be on the active roster. He can't be an emergency quarterback. They can't be used in those situations. And if you want Drew Lock to be the guy that can step in to actually be the full-time backup if Sam Darnold needs to excuse me, I was not quick enough on the mute button. I apologize. So if you still want Drew Lock to be your true backup, then you need to have 3 guys active on game day. I think that's possible. I think that's possible. I don't think it's ideal. So there is this scenario where Jalen Milroe plays well enough where they're like, nah, we're going to keep 2 quarterbacks, and the third guy will keep on the practice squad. I don't think Drew Lock would probably agree to be on a practice squad. But by doing that, then you're pretty much clearing the way for keeping 2 quarterbacks active each week as you normally would, and having Jalen Milroe available to sub in whenever you want. That would be a very good outcome for the Seahawks if Jalen Milroe is able to progress that much over training camp. I'm not projecting that to happen, but I just wanted to talk through that with you all so you understand the logic of why I have it in this order and why I don't have Drew Lock as a lock to make the roster. So that's quarterbacks. That's 3 players. Now, this is going to get messy because this is the part I messed up before I came on with all of you. I did not have fullback as a separate group. And so I just have added Brady Russell and Robbie Oots to the running back column just for expediency in this situation. And now I have to think about the math here of what this means to have a fullback. So keep in mind, again, last year they kept 3 running backs. There's just no way I think they would keep 3 this year. That would be 1 backup running back and then a fullback. No, they're going to keep at least 4. And I'm going to currently project that they keep 4. And I'm going to change the color code for Mr. Oots to be high confidence. Excuse me while I get to my controls. All right, so I've got Robbie Oots now showing up as high confidence. And what that means is that I've got Ken Walker at the top of this list. I've got Zach Charbonnet after him. I still have Kenny McIntosh as high confidence and over Damian Martinez. I don't know how I feel about that one. And I think that could change. It really could. Then I've got, under Kenny McIntosh, I've got Robbie Oots as the guy that I believe is going to win that fullback job. And then Damian Martinez, and then George Halani, and then Brady Russell. Where Brady Russell fits in that, we'll see. My current best guess is actually Brady Russell is going to be kept on this roster and he's going to be a tight end. That's my guess. But I'm not ready yet to quite make that. So I'm going to stick with my projection of 4, taking one more quote running back than they did last year. In this case, adding a fullback to the list, and that's Robbie Oots. And then you've got this real battle, like Damian Martinez, Kenny McIntosh, and I'll put George Holani in that mix. I know other people won't. I think George Holani is a really interesting back. Brady Russell is a really interesting player, a guy that they love on special teams. And I just think that he's going to find his way onto this roster one way or another. I think the coaching staff loves him. Maybe he'll beat out Robbie Oots and it'll just be that straightforward. And if Robbie Oots doesn't make the roster, he would be an easy practice squad stash if they wanted to do that. That's possible. But I think that they would prefer the guy that they drafted to play the position and who is of the size to play the position the way they want it played. I think that they would prefer Robbie Oots to win that role. So Brady Russell's an interesting one. I think he's going to make this roster. I just don't know exactly how it's going to play out yet. So we'll come back to this when we do the broader math. Okay. So then we get into wide receivers. All right. And I'll tell you something, man. The Seahawks have collected a lot of hyphenated players this year. I think they've got 4 or 5 hyphenated players. Starts on the wide receiver room with Jackson Smith and Jigba. You've got Cooper Kupp, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, your other hyphenate on the receiver in the receiver room. Those are the top 3. I have to say, I considered making MVS blue, high confidence, instead of green, lock. I think there is a path where Cody White, Torrey Horton, some other guys step up in a way that makes them question whether they should keep MVS or go with the younger player. I ended up saying that he's a lock because I just feel like Clint Kubiak has a lot of familiarity with him after last season, and there's a lot of inexperience in this room. That's my guess at this point is that he's a lock to at least start the season with the team. Maybe he won't end the season, but that's kind of where I'm seeing it. Now, after him, you've got Jake Bobo, who I've got as a high confidence player to make this roster. That's 4. I'll come back to Bobo in a second. After him, I've got Torrey Horton Jr. as the 5th guy, and I have them only keeping 5 receivers. Last year, they kept 6. This year, I'm projecting 1 fewer. Again, they are not going to be an 11 personnel team. They're not going to be a 3 wide receiver team very often. You don't need to have 6 receivers on your roster. There's been years where the Seahawks were a heavy 3 receiver team and they still only kept 5 receivers. So I'm currently projecting they're going to keep 5 receivers, 1 fewer than last year. And this is going to be a really, really competitive spot. Maybe the most competitive spot on the roster. It's in the conversation for that because Torrey Horton Jr. has return experience. If he can be a return man and they feel really good about him as a return man, then Steven Sims becomes less of a lock on this team. Steven Sims has actually looked relatively good as a receiver during OTAs and minicamp, but he's really here to be a return man. And he's the designated return guy. So you'd think he's got a pretty good chance to make the roster, but if he makes the roster and they only keep 5, then you're cutting one of MVS, Jake Bobo, Torrey Horton. Like, in order for the math to work, like JSN and Cooper Kupp are keeps. And then if you want Steven Sims and Torrey Horton to make it, then you either are cutting MVS or Jake Bobo. Like, that's straight math on that, assuming that they're going to keep 5. And if you're going to keep 3 quarterbacks, which is 1 more than you kept last year, and you're going to keep 4 running backs, which is 1 more than you kept last year, You got to cut from somewhere. And I think receiver absolutely makes sense that they will want to try to limit it to 5. It's also not the strongest room. Like yes, there's a competition, but this is not a competition of like alpha, super established, clearly really good players. So you generally want to keep more at positions where you feel really good about your depth. I don't think they necessarily feel great about their wide receiver depth. The other real wild card here is Cody White. Cody White moved up the depth chart during OTAs and minicamp at the X receiver position. He is a more complete receiver than MVS. He also has special teams ability. I think he blocked a punt last year, if I remember right. It was the first time he's ever had a special team snap to do that. And MVS is not a special teams guy. So this is why, like, I'm teetering on this green versus blue for MVS. Like, as I talk through it, I'm going to go ahead and change him to, blue. I think that's more accurate for how I'm feeling about MVS than truly a lock. All right. So this next group of guys between Torrey Horton, Steven Sims, Cody White, there's real competition there. And that's not even mentioning Derek Young, who's been on the roster for a number of years, is an excellent special teams player. Ricky White, another excellent special teams player, a rookie that I'm sure they're excited about. And John Rice Plumlee, who has been working his tail off at receiver, has made some plays. I think they feel bullish on him. And then you've got Tyrone Broden, who's the tall 6'5" receiver from Arkansas, the undrafted free agent Montori Foster, who made the team after rookie minicamp, had a good rookie minicamp, and has been fine. I just don't see those guys making this roster almost in any possible way. Their best hope is practice squad. So, I mean, I think Ricky White is a practice squad guy that you could stash there. I think Derek Young certainly is a guy you could put on practice squad. You won't lose. I think Cody White probably fits that. Maybe Steven Sims. And maybe they do something like stash Steven Sims on the practice squad and elevate him for, I think they can elevate him 3 times before they'd have to sign him to the roster. And that would give them the chance to decide whether or not they want to create a space. So there's some options, but man, I just can't see them. We'll see what Torrey Horton looks like, but I can't see them exposing Torrey Horton to waivers. He seems too valuable and too promising to do that. So I feel like Torrey Horton is the top of this heap. And then Jake Bobo, Bobo's a really good special teams player. He's a good receiver. He's a good blocker. He makes a lot of sense. He's not the most dynamic player. Is there a situation where Cody White pushes him off the roster? It's not out of the question. I just think it's not likely. So that's the receiver group. Again, if you're just listening now, the way that plays out is, excuse me, we'll go full screen. Is I have them keeping 5 receivers. I have those 5 receivers being Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Jake Bobo, and Torrey Horton Jr. Those are the 5. All right. Now, let's get over to the tight end room. All right. And you see where this starts to, like, the math on offense is challenging. Now, I have them only keeping 3 tight ends. As I look at this, as I've now kind of gone through it, man, I don't know if I can. I'd have to steal from the offensive line to make that a 4 tight end. They kept 4 last year. This is going to be a lot of 12 personnel. Like, there's going to be a lot of 2 tight end sets. Having only 3 tight ends doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes more sense for them to get to 4 tight ends. So you either have to steal from the quarterback position, which means Drew Lock doesn't make this team. You'd have to steal from the running back room, which means I just cannot see them keeping a fullback and only 2 running backs. That just doesn't make sense. I almost like rule that out as a possibility. I think it's more likely they keep 5 than that they keep 3. Maybe they go with 4 wide receivers. Like, it's possible. It is possible that they only keep 4 wide receivers. I don't think the 4th wide receiver is going to get many reps, to be honest. The 4th wide receiver, even when the Seahawks were running a lot of 3 receiver sets, did not get many targets. So the 5th receiver is purely a special teams guy. So maybe they steal from that. But right now, at this moment, I'm predicting 3 tight ends. I feel really bad about that prediction. I don't like that prediction. I might even change it here as we go through, but that's where I'm at. And I have a different color coding for this, which is right now I've got AJ Barner as the top ranked tight end on the roster, the one that I'm most confident will be on the roster when they announce the 53. Elijah Arroyo as the second most likely. And then I've got Noah Fant as the third, but I've got him as this orangish creamsicle color, whatever you want to call it. And the reason I have him there is I think he's going to be traded before they lock in the roster. And I don't think it's because Noah Fant's a terrible player. I don't think that they don't like him as a person, like anything like that. I think this is where the roster math gets really challenging because everyone's talking about the money that he makes. I don't think that's that big of a factor. Yes, they would save a lot of money by trading him. But if you keep Noah Fant, and let's say for a second you only keep 3 tight ends, then you're cutting you're cutting Eric Saubert because you're not cutting Barner or Arroyo. Those guys aren't getting cut. And remember, I think Brady Russell is going to be not going to win the fullback job and is going to be someone that they keep on as essentially a H-back tight end guy. And if they do that, that will be 4 tight ends, or he will beat out Eric Saubert, one of those 2 things. They could also put Brady Russell on practice squad. I just, we'll see. But point being is, I think they really want Eric Saubert or Brady Russell to be on this more than they want Noah Fant to be on this roster. And in order to make that work roster-wise, they're going to have to find someone that takes Noah Fant to do that. So that's that. I'm going to change. I don't know why I put Eric Saubert as a lock. He's not a lock. So let me change that. He is a guy that I would put as high confidence, and I'm going to put Nick Callerup as on the bubble. I think Nick Callerup is a guy that is going to really jump up the depth chart once pads come on. And is the undrafted free agent out of Minnesota. I think he's huge and a really talented blocker. There's a chance he could hop over Eric Saubert and be the guy that they choose to take and have a very young but very athletic and gritty tight end room with Barner, Arroyo, and Callerup. Most likely he'll be a practice squad guy, but I think he's got an outside chance to make the roster. So this is a complicated one too, because if they keep 4, then again, you're stealing from somewhere else. Don't know where that is. Maybe it's offensive line. We'll talk about that now. All right. So let's talk about offensive line. So last year they kept 11. I am projecting right now that they are going to keep 11 again. And the guys that I have in kind of order of most likely to be on the 53, Charles Cross, Abe Lucas, Gray Zabel, Christian Haynes, Olu Oluwatimi, Anthony Bradford, Jalen Sundell. Those are the guys that I have as locks. I could probably be talked into Anthony Bradford not being a lock, but I think it's pretty likely that they're going to keep him around based on what I've seen, and we'll just see how it goes. So if you just talk about the guys that I've currently got as locks, that is 7 players. All right. It is you're starting left tackle, you're starting right tackle, you're starting left guard, you're starting center, assuming it's Olu Oluwatimi or Jalen Sundell. And then one of either Christian Haynes or Anthony Bradford as your starting right guard. Okay. So you've got 2 guys that would likely be backups Remember, Jalen Sundell did play a little bit of backup tackle last year, so he does have and plays guard, so he has some roster flexibility or position flexibility, I should say. After those guys, I've got Josh Jones, the free agent swing tackle that they signed, Bryce Cabledew, the 6th-round pick who's playing backup third string right guard, and Satawa Lamea, who's been backup left guard, as the next 3 guys. That gets you to 10. And so now Josh Jones can be a backup at either tackle position. Cabledew, I think, is going to be a guy they just won't cut. I think he's too good. And so he will be a backup guard option. Now, remember, he played tackle in college, so maybe if they're in a pinch, they could play him at tackle as well. And then Satawa Lamea, I think, just showed a lot of promise last year, and he is in even better shape than he's been, more powerful than he's ever been, and we'll see how he takes to this coaching. And then the 11th guy, and this is where, as I look at this, maybe really what I'd have to do is say that they're going to keep 10. Maybe I'm gonna do this. That means Mike Jarrell wouldn't make the roster. Right now, I have Mike Jarrell making the roster as what would be another backup. You could basically say that Josh Jones would be the backup right tackle and Mike Jarrell would be the backup left tackle. I really like Mason Richmond as well. I don't have him making the roster as a backup right tackle. I think he would be a practice squad guy and a really good one to have. And then I'll tell you, like, Federico Moranges, who is I think he gets a roster exemption being an international player. So I think he would be able to be on the team, even if he doesn't officially make the squad. Amari Kite, the big left tackle, who formerly played for Alabama, then moved to, I think, UCF. He's an interesting prospect, but I don't think he has a good chance of making. And then Luke Felix Fualalo is the other guy that I don't have as a real chance to make the roster. So you see the math gets tough with the offensive line, where as I look at it, if you don't keep Jarrell, then you're counting on Josh Jones being your only true tackle depth. That just doesn't make sense. Jalen Sundell would have to be your emergency tackle depth. Maybe you'd feel good about Bryce Cabledew. But that's why Mike Jarrell or Mason Richmond might have a leg up on Satawa Lamea or Bryce Cabledew, because they already have the guys that can play guard: Gray Zabel, Christian Haynes, Anthony Bradford, Jalen Sundell could do it. So you've already got right there 4 guys that could all play guard or backup. And then if you kept 2 more guards, this probably is wrong. I should probably hop Mike Jarrell above Satawa Lamea. I think I'm just partial to Satawa Lamea. So let me do that. I'm going to put Mike Jarrell above Satawa Lamea. I'm going to make Satawa Lamea on the bubble. And I'm going to make both of these guys on the bubble as well. Realistically, even though I think it's not the most likely, I think it's the math of this where you're talking about the backups gets a little complicated if you don't have enough backup tackles. And so I think Jarrell has a little bit of a leg up. I'm going to move this to 10, and I'm going to move offensive linemen to 10. I'm going to move tight ends to 4. I just feel better about that. And what that gets you to is, still, when you do this, you end up with, I think, 26, if I'm right here. 7, 11. Yeah, 26. So that means you're going to have to keep 1 fewer on defense than you did a year ago. So you'd have to cut 1 more from this number if you want to have 25 defenders on the team. So we'll talk about the defense tomorrow during the show. But what that would mean is, again, on the offensive line, the guys that make it would be Charles Cross, Abe Lucas is your starting tackles. Your backup tackles would be Josh Jones and Mike Jarrell. Your starting guards would be Gray Zabel and, let's say, Christian Haynes for now. Your backup guards would be Anthony Bradford, Jalen Sundell, and Bryce Cabledew. Your starting center would be Olu Otumi or Jalen Sundell. And then you also have Christian Haynes, who can take snaps at center if you need to. That feels like a good set, to be honest. And it puts Satawa Lamea and Mason Richmond on the outside looking in. Tight ends, AJ Barner, Elijah Arroyo, Eric Saubert, and then maybe Brady Russell or Noah Fant as your fourth. Wide receivers, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Jake Bobo, and Torrey Horton. Running backs, Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh. Fullback, Robbie Oots. Means Damian Martinez does not make the roster. Sam Darnold as your quarterback, Jalen Milroe as one of the backups, and Drew Lock. I have them keeping 3. That is the place that, as I really stare at this, the team would really benefit from Jalen Milroe making them cut Drew Lock. Like, that would be one of the biggest advantageous things that could happen for the Seahawks over this training camp. So we'll see. Lots of stuff left to play and figure out. I think some of the names that I'm most uncomfortable with being below the line, Damian Martinez, I think, is a very good player. He was a 7th round pick, though, so let's be realistic. Cody White, I think it was ascending last year and into this offseason. Steven Sims was taking the dominant number of snaps as kick returner, but Torrey Horton wasn't playing during offseason, so we'll see if that changes. But Steven Sims is a guy that they signed as a free agent to come in and fix their kick return, punt return kind of situation. So having him outside feels odd. And then, I definitely don't feel great about Satawa Lamea not making the roster. But I think I feel pretty good about the hard decisions that would have to be made here. So that's it. That's my prediction. I'm curious where you guys are on where you're different, where you see the numbers different, where you see the players different. So let me know in the comments or in the chat. If you didn't get a chance to see me on with Mike Salk yesterday over on Seattle Sports, check it out. Had a fun time over there. Talked a lot of Seahawks with them. And, hopefully we'll get to do more of that. We'll see how things progress. Tomorrow, I will be doing the same thing, except I will be talking about defense. And then we'll talk about kind of the whole roster together. Thursday morning, we will talk about the overall Seahawks offseason with EJ Snyder of Bootleg Football. So looking forward to doing that. Tomorrow's show, exact time TBD, probably going to be in the afternoon again, just based off the way schedules are. And, keep an eye out. If you haven't already, click like, subscribe, and the bell to get notified when I go live. That's the best way to kind of keep track of when things are going to happen. Also, being a patron, patreon.com/hawkblogger, get access to the Discord channel. And I try to put in the announcements channel when I'm going to go live so people can stay up on that. And as I was talking, one of our original, just OG best people in our community, detail oriented, has gifted 10 Hawk Blogger memberships. This is the guy that really kicked it all off last year, giving away lots of memberships, being incredibly generous. And now I think like literally thousands of memberships have been given away in the last year. And Bobby is a big part of that. So really appreciate his generosity. If you want one of these free memberships, all you got to do is turn gifting on for your YouTube account. Go ahead and Google it if you don't know how to do that. And then just like, subscribe, comment on the show, watch the show. All those things feed into how YouTube decides who gets these free memberships. And if you get one of the free memberships, consider paying it forward, giving one to somebody else, upgrading to a club level membership or higher. That gets you access to the Discord channel as well. So you can hang out with all the patrons and talk Seahawks, Mariners, all the other stuff going on. All right, everybody. That was fun. I can't wait to do tomorrow. I'm like, I wish we could just do it today. I mean, we could, but let's enjoy this off-season pace, and we'll get to the defense tomorrow. And then next week, man, players show up and we start talking about real football. Until tomorrow, this has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.